Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:07 on this first day of December. It's O'Connor and Company. Larry O'Connor here, back from vacation, and so happy to be here and happy that I've got solid people who make me look good while I'm gone. Thank you to Andrew Langer and Hans von Spikotsky, and of course to Julie and Patrice for doing all the heavy lifting while I was gone. Good morning, Julie. Did you miss me?
Good morning. We did. We sure did.
I see. We. Not you personally.
Of course I did.
Oh, no. I get it. I can read through the lines. Coming up at 8:05, we're going to speak with Steve Sun, former chief of the U.S. Capitol Police, and then at 8:35, Scott Jennings of CNN. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock and Joe diGenova. Joe, did you miss me, at least?
I did, Larry. We had a wonderful Thanksgiving down here in Florida. The entire family took a break to say a prayer for the two National Guards people, Andrew Wolf and Sarah Beckstrom. We remembered them, and I hope everybody continues to remember them. It's pretty important stuff.
Amen, it is. And, well, let's just pick up right where you left off there. Much has been said about this video that was put out that suggested that members of the military, including these National Guardsmen, are in some way following unlawful orders. Now, when pinned down on this, Elise Slotkin, Mark Kelly, they refuse to be specific, other than, of course, Elise Slotkin citing Nuremberg and a few good men, Joe. So I'm sure that there's some legal precedent there. But this sort of undermining of the military and the Code of Uniform Military Justice seems to be, at the very least, questionable. But is it illegal?
Well, it may not be illegal because people have First Amendment rights. Even idiots in Congress have First Amendment rights. But here's the thing. This was designed, no matter what they say, all the Democrat Party finagling and lying after the fact to justify this. This was designed to create insubordination, to encourage insubordination. It was the entire purpose of it. It has nothing to do with anything other than that. There were no illegal orders that they can point to, so there was no reason to do the video except to spawn insubordination in the ranks. I do hope that Mark Kelly is recalled up for active duty and is court-martialed. The only way to deal with stuff like this is a punch in the face legally. And so that's what I hope happens. We'll see whether or not Pete Hegseth is going to do that. I don't doubt his resolve as the Secretary of War. Let's see if he follows through. I hope he does. I think it's a fitting answer to the stupidity of these six morons.
Yeah. And of course, by the way, Elise Slotkin, just a week before this shooting happened, was on national television saying that she feared that it was inevitable that a National Guardsman would turn and fire upon innocent Americans, which, by the way, tells you exactly what she thinks of our military.
Remember, she was the up and coming superstar of the Democratic Party. Remember when they waltzed her out for the after State of the Union speech that Donald Trump gave, and all of a sudden she was Wonder Woman. She's actually an idiot.
Yeah, she is. Can I also just, Joe, ask you your opinion on Maggie Goodlander? She's the representative from New Hampshire. She's married to Jake Sullivan. What are your thoughts? A lot of people are saying, gosh, this has this reeks of the deep state and of Hillary Clinton and of the sort of shenanigans of trying to get to get unrest, sort of stirring up trouble. What are your thoughts on Maggie Goodlander's involvement in the seditious six?
Well, it's clearly this didn't just happen by accident. These six didn't get together and say, "Hey, let's have some fun. Let's put on a show." Mickey Rooney, let's put on a show. That's not what they did. This was a planned event, and I think it's actually worthy of investigation by a House committee. The Senate would never do it because they can never get their act together, the Republicans in the Senate. But the House Subcommittee on Investigations ought to go into how this was produced and call that woman, Maggie, before the committee and have her testify under oath. Look, first of all, if she's married to Jake Sullivan, that shows she's stupid. But other than that, she's conniving. And I think she ought to be able to testify about her brilliant plan. Put her under oath before a House committee and, have Jake hold her hand while she's testifying.
Joe, meanwhile, we'll wrap things up here, at least on this part of the story, with regard to the shooting of the National Guardsman. We do have this suspect, and it appears as though they're claiming there's some question as to whether the vetting took place when he was brought here frantically during the Biden administration, when they were just trying to dump as many people in the country from Afghanistan so they can have the talking point that, it was the single greatest airlift of refugees in the history of mankind, so there was nothing wrong with our pullout of Afghanistan. What the question now remains: is it legal for the Trump administration to come back and demand a re-vetting process of every single one of those Afghan refugees? Do they have some sort of legal standing to say, no, you can't do that? We've already passed through the vetting process.
Well, even if they don't have the legal standing to do that, the refugees will do that pursuant to the left-wing National Lawyers Guild network around the country, which will represent them in seditious actions. But the president has the right to vet anybody who's in the country, including after the fact. That's how people lose their citizenship. That's how they lose their visa status, their permanent resident status, because of post-admission investigations. So the president has every right in the world to reinvestigate anybody who was entered into this country under those horrific conditions. Look, the Biden administration, speaking of Jake Sullivan, who was the mastermind for the exit from Afghanistan, Abbey Gate, you name it, they're the ones who created this monstrosity purposely. And again, I just wait for the moment when they're all called up for public testimony to explain all this stupidity. And you'll just hear them lie through their teeth about it.
You mentioned Abbey Gate. This is what frosts me and drives me insane. I was like screaming back at the television all weekend as they were talking about this allegedly anonymously sourced story that says that there was a war crime off the coast of Venezuela, and we'll get to that in our next segment with you, Joe. But you mentioned Abbey Gate. All of these people who are saying that Trump and Hegseth are guilty of a war crime out here in the Caribbean, they said nothing about the Biden administration ordering a drone strike against an innocent family in Afghanistan going to a wedding so that they could have a fig leaf of some sort of narrative change after the disastrous Abbey Gate terrorist attack. They droned an innocent family in response to the Abbey Gate, and they had nothing to do with the terror attack.
Well, as Lloyd Austin would say to you, Larry, picky, picky, picky. The truth is they are perfectly capable of verbal and PR atrocities every day of the week. The sooner the American people realize that Democrats are good at one thing, lying consistently over the years.
All right, Joe, stay there. We got more about this story. Handed, by the way, to Natasha Bertrand. Which, she hasn't seen an anonymously sourced lie that she hasn't gone and published, and yet she still continues to work and be a member in good standing of the D.C. Press Corps. We'll talk about this story and whether it is legal, whether it is within the confines of an act of war to circle back and make sure there are no survivors after a rocket strike. It seems to me that that's pretty standard procedure when it comes to warfare, but apparently it's a big controversy. Joe will talk about the legality of that coming up in a moment. First, though, at 7:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Now, people hearing about this story out of the Caribbean that's been anonymously sourced, and I frankly don't believe it because of the fact that it's anonymously sourced. How many times do we have to see an anonymously sourced story ballyhooed by CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, with people like Natasha Bertrand behind them that say that Trump is guilty of doing horrible atrocities, and then it turns out, that story is not quite true. It happens all the time. That said, just as an academic discussion, Joe diGenova, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, if SEAL Team 6 is engaged in a lawful act of war, which I don't think anybody is claiming that the president as commander-in-chief does not have the right to protect our borders by shooting these boats coming from Nicaragua full of narco-terrorists. There's no legal question there. Now the question is, the way you're going about doing it. Joe, the story claims that SEAL Team 6 was told to shoot at this rocket and that there were to be no survivors. And after the initial strike, it appears that there may have been 2 that survived, and they were then dispensed with. Is that an illegal war crime?
Well, first of all, they're illegal combatants. the president has declared all of those people illegal combatants, which means that the rules of war do not apply to illegal combatants. That's the whole purpose of the phrase illegal combatants.
So wait, the narco gang out of Nicaragua didn't sign on to the Geneva Conventions?
That's right. They did not. They are without uniforms. They are without an organized army. They are narco traffickers. They are terrorists, according to the designation of the President of the United States. They are illegal combatants. They can be dispensed with at any time.
What about this question of, the initial strike took these, and again, I hate giving oxygen to this story because I don't believe that it's true. Yeah. But even if it were true, since we're engaged in this, and since Mark Kelly is going on national television suggesting that in some way the members of SEAL Team 6 are now guilty of war crimes, if there are two survivors of an initial strike, is there some sort of law or international standard that says that the military can't come back and make sure that those people are dead?
Again, illegal combatants.
Right.
We are in a non-established war zone. The battle is on. Are those, assuming for the sake of argument that there are two quote-unquote survivors, are they armed? Are they firing back? The answer to the question is, until proven otherwise, they are armed combatants and they can be killed.
And that may be, people might not like to hear that, and as they're eating their Cheerios, and there's like, oh, this is awful that this happens, and there should be a more civilized way.
Put on your big boy pants, go out there like a Marine, take fire coming your way, and make the decisions that have to be made in a second by soldiers in conflict. That's nonsense. That's like these six morons saying they're worried about illegal orders trying to cause insubordination. Worry your ass off.
That's right. And since Elise Slotkin likes to confuse a few good men with actual situations of war, let me just say, you may not like it. You may not think it's nice. They're not asking for your approval. They would like you to just, go about your lives because you need SEAL Team 6 on that wall. You want them on that wall.
This is a perfect example.
When you're a hostage in Mogadishu and the SEAL Team 6 is coming for you, you want to say, please be triple armed.
That's right.
Yeah. And again, Joe, this is a case of this suicidal empathy, which is taking over our country, where people, like these guys, are not nice guys. Whatever they were carrying in that boat, fentanyl, whatever, they are coming here to kill Americans. So this idea that we are suddenly more concerned about these people in this boat than our own military is... again, a case of suicidal empathy.
This is the same logic from people like Tim Kaine. Tim Kaine comes from the old liberation theology group of leftist Catholics who believe that everybody in Central America, including the terrorists, are really good souls that have to be saved. So I do not want Tim Smith on my SEAL Team 6 team.
Joe, real fast, because things get muddled here. Mark Kelly on Meet the Press yesterday dodged every specific, and I got to say, Kristen Welker actually asked some pretty good questions. One of which was, you're an officer in the military. Would you refuse to follow these orders that the president has given? And he couldn't even answer that. He couldn't even answer that question. He claims that members of the military should check things out with JAG officers, with the lawyers, before they follow. I'm sorry, is that how the military is supposed to work these days, Joe?
All orders are presumptively legal and constitutional. You do not have the right, as a soldier, to stop in the middle of a battle and start making phone calls on your cell phone to JAG officers. That's not what this is about. What you are watching is the disintegration of a narrative, because Mr. Kelly, I'll call him Mr. for the moment until they recall him to active duty for court-martial. Mr. Kelly is a national disgrace. He's an embarrassment to the uniform. He should be called back to active duty, and he should be court-martialed. It's disgraceful what he's doing. They are seeking to undermine the disciplinary structure of the military. These are members of Congress, believe it or not.
Well, and they've also moved, if I can just quickly, Joe, as final response to this, they've shifted from don't follow illegal orders to Listen, after the fact, when we're in charge, when we have the majority, when we have a Democrat in the White House, we're going to have hearings, and we might decide 10 years later that these were illegal orders, and we're going to come for you, and you might be prosecuted. I mean, that's beyond insidious in terms of how it breaks down how our military is supposed to function in every possible way. Again, I would suggest that that is directly undermining the chain of command and the commander-in-chief. Do those rules just fall to a member of the military like Mark Kelly, or can anyone be brought up for such things? Does First Amendment protect Slotkin and everybody else?
No, Slotkin, the idiots, all the idiots like Slotkin are protected, unfortunately, except the Senate and the House have the right to censure people, expel them, take various types of ethical disciplinary actions. But as far as Mark Kelly is concerned, he needs to be called back to active duty and court-martialed. It is not even a close call. Yeah. He is suborning insubordination. This guy is disgusting. And all this crap about his valorous military service, that was then, this is now.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. And I would just say, if I can just add to that, I agree. Legally, that should be done. Morally, it should be done. My only concern, if I can put my political hat on, is I think you immediately make Mark Kelly a martyr. And he's already fundraising off of all of this. You're basically handing the Although, listen, maybe Mark Kelly versus Gavin Newsom would be a pretty fun pop the popcorn kind of event for us to watch.
Are you ready for a bald president? That is the question.
It's 7:24.
Coming up, we'll have more on the Afghan refugee killer of that National Guard member. Tragic story. We'll have more. Keep it here. It's 7:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
Cory Booker got married. We're going to talk about that. There's something.
What?
There's something not quite right about this story.
Good Lord.
I can't quite put my finger on it. Although, from what I understand, based on Cory Booker's nighttime activities back in the day, wasn't much he wouldn't put his finger on.
Oh, Larry, good grief.
Coming up a little later in the program at 8:05, we're going to speak with the former chief of Capitol Police, Steve Sund, and then at 8:35, Scott Jennings will join us. Love that, Scott Jennings. It's Larry O'Connor. I, by the way, am fully in support of Scott Jennings running for the Senate in Kentucky, because that would get him out of the media business. I'm ruthless that way. I don't want anyone else doing what I do. I want to be the only one, Julie.
I get it.
Thank you. By the way, thank you to Andrew Langer and Hans von Spakovsky and everybody filling in while I was on vacation. I'm back now and feeling good. Can I tell you a quick?
We're glad you're back.
Quick tangent here before we get to the news, because I know people are listening because they want to know the news. But quickly, and we've got some news on the murder of the National Guardsman and the other National Guardsmen still in critical condition here in Washington, D.C. President Trump continues to talk about that. And so let's just get into that. And then I want to tell you my little anecdote about something I observed in Europe while I was on my vacation about Christian countries and secularism creeping in there. But let's get you the latest on this story, because it's horrific. It's happened right in our backyard. Of course, we know about the horrible murder of Sarah Beckstrom. Andrew Wolf still clings to life, by the way. Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf of the United States Air Force, who was deployed here in Washington, D.C., completely legally. Anyone who is in Washington, D.C., lives in Washington, D.C., works in Washington, D.C., knows that the National Guard made this city better over the course of the last several months, where they have been legally, lawfully, and appropriately deployed to assist local law enforcement. They have made this city better, safer, more livable, and they were targeted. They were targeted for a cold-blooded murder. They were first targeted by those 6 members of Congress, Democrats all, who suggested that they were in some way unlawfully or inappropriately or unconstitutionally following orders, illegal orders from their commander-in-chief. You also had Elisa Slotkin, former CIA operative, now senator from Michigan, say that she believed that it was inevitable that one of these National Guardsmen would turn their gun on innocent Americans and start killing them in the streets. That's
right.
what she said.
She said it. Yep.
And then within days, this radical Afghan refugee who was brought here to cover up for Joe Biden's disastrous pullout from that country, decided to take up arms and target these people, drove across the country and targeted these two National Guardsmen while screaming like a jihadist here in Washington, D.C. That's the update on the story. President Trump has now invited the families of those two National Guard members to the White House so that he can help and console them as the commander-in-chief. What we know about the killer is that he was part of a CIA unit in Afghanistan. He actually cooperated with U.S. forces and worked with the CIA, and then was part of the giant airlift of humanity that brought people here. We were told that everybody, we were told they were vetted. Jen Psaki promised they all got vetted. And of course, the final asylum status was granted to this person just a few months ago under the Trump administration. So now apparently this is Donald Trump's fault. And it was such a duplicitous moment here. I believe it was with Kristen Welker, who said, well, it was your Department of Homeland Security and your administration that granted asylum. So aren't you the ones who didn't vet him? And it is such, again, either people in the media in this town are ignorant or they just like to pretend that they're ignorant. But the vetting process took place years ago. When the final asylum papers go through, the Trump administration has two choices here. Either they go ahead and process the asylum claims that were made 4 years ago under the Biden administration,
right,
and trust that the vetting that the Biden administration claims took place did actually take place.
Which they claimed they did. They claimed it did.
And then you end up having a murderer on your hands.
Yeah.
Or the Trump administration can call a halt to all of the asylum procedures and say, we're not trusting anything that the Biden administration did or said.
And then it becomes a human rights abuse from the media. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So pick your poison. Apparently, according to Homeland Security now, and I put this out there, I tweeted this over the weekend because I couldn't enjoy my vacation. I was watching these news events take place. And the question is, did this guy get radicalized by the Taliban while he was in Afghanistan? Or did he get radicalized by the political left in America while he was in America? And it appears as though it's the latter. According to the Department of Homeland Security, Ramunullah Lakanawal lived in Washington State, and that's where he became radicalized. Investigators are looking for more information from family members and others, but here's what Kristi Noem said. That's about the vetting process. Said that this person, 29 years old, the suspect in the Wednesday shooting, was part of the Biden administration's mass evacuation in 2021. And he said, quoting now, Kristi Noem, we believe he was radicalized since he's been here in the country. We believe it was through connections in his home community and state, and we're going to continue to talk to those who interacted with him, who were his family members. So either it was the people in the Taliban who has poisoned this guy's mind and told him that the military is the enemy and they should be killed in cold blood, or it was people right here at home.
Well, it does make you wonder. These tens of thousands of Afghanis come into this country, they settle into these communities, and you wonder what sorts of supports there are. I mean, I really do wonder, do they just get involved with their local, Afghani community and mosque? And what is that? Is that mosque a radicalized mosque?
Right.
What kind of services are they getting? What kind of jobs are they getting? Because, I mean, I do wonder, what is radical? What happened to this guy to radicalize him? It's worth an investigation.
Of course.
And then when he hears a Michigan senator say National Guard is going to shoot people, what effect did that have on him?
The other question, either it's his local mosque, his local community who have holdovers from the Taliban and Al Qaeda, or he watches MS Now all day long.
And he's worried about. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's we're going to have former Capitol Police Chief Steve Sun coming up at 8:05 to talk about the increase in National Guard here in D.C. and how they work with the police. Right now it's 7:44. Remember, extensive vetting. That's what they told us. There was extensive vetting of all of these refugees that were crammed into planes to airlift out of Afghanistan, just so Jen Psaki could go up in front of the podium and say, this is the most successful withdrawal in American history. Look at the number of refugees, as if that's the measure of success. After the Abbey Gate terrorist attack that claimed the lives of 13 service members, but they wanted to change the subject. So they started airlifting all of these Afghan nationals, all of these refugees. Now one of them, it doesn't matter where he got radicalized, whether it was here at home or whether it was in Afghanistan, but he murdered a National Guardsman, and now we've got another one clinging to life. But that's not the only one. You reminded us earlier, Julie, of this Afghan national in Fairfax County who took shots at a police officer during a traffic stop, right? Jamal Wali.
Yes. This was an incredible. It was all caught on police camera. He made a sort of awkward stop. The police were behind him. They approached his car. They had an argument, but he made a lot of these very incendiary statements beforehand. He said, I'm I'm with the Taliban, or I fought with the Taliban. I fought with. He said a bunch of sort of mumbled stuff, but he mentioned the Taliban. Then he took out a gun and he started shooting, and he shot Fairfax police officers, and they survived. But it was a terrifying incident. And again, this guy was clearly radicalized, and yet he worked with U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan. There are pictures, it's very interesting, on Twitter of him, sitting in tanks, sitting in armored vehicles, working with U.S. service members. And so
and also connected to the CIA programs over in Afghanistan.
Yeah, and he said right before he shot that Fairfax police officer, he said, I should have worked with the Taliban.
Yeah. By the way, it should also be noted that Governor-elect and former Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger and former CIA operative moved heaven and earth to try to make sure that all of these people were brought into the country. And we were told, we're just going to airlift them to some safe place, and then we'll vet them before we let them out into the country. Yeah. And we keep hearing it over and over and over again. They've been vetted. But they were vetted by the Biden administration, if they were vetted at all, by Anthony Blinken, by Jake Sullivan, by Lloyd Austin. They were the ones responsible for the vetting.
I will tell you, too, we brought a lot of Afghans, I was just corrected on Twitter for saying that, Afghans into Alexandria, Virginia. And just last year, there was a walkout in Alexandria, Virginia, with the students screaming, from the river to the sea. Okay, so it is terrifying what's going on in some of these Northern Virginia communities. I think that to me is, you are radical. If you're screaming from the river to the sea and you just came here from Afghanistan, airlifted out of that country, and you come here and you start intimidating Jews. Yeah, not good.
It tells me that when they say they've been properly vetted, what they mean to say is, don't worry, they've all registered to vote and they're all Democrats.
Yes, exactly.
That's what it means. Let's not forget what J.D. Vance said to Margaret Brennan about all of this when he was told that these people have all been properly vetted.
Well, Margaret, I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember. So clearly not all of these foreign nationals have been properly vetted.
But there are 30,000 people in the pipeline, Afghan refugees.
But my primary concern as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that we know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
It's not good. These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted, and many people in the media and the Democratic Party said that he was properly vetted. Clearly he wasn't. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted, and because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other American citizens' kids to do that either.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country, and
Period. That's the only appropriate response to this gobbledygook, to this garbage. I don't really care, Margaret. It's 7:54.